If you've ever noticed that your child with autism struggles more than most children with transitions, changes to routine, and predictability, you're not alone. And today we are diving into why children with autism specifically really thrive with routine and how it can help them to be more confident, secure, and avoid meltdowns just that little bit more. Hi. Thanks for joining me. Now, my name is Rhiannon Morgan. Welcome to the Real Talk with Rhi podcast. I'd love it if you could join the conversation down in the comments in YouTube. Introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about your family, the struggles that you are facing perhaps with your children with autism and their routines. Do they really benefit from routine? And if you are listening on the audio podcast, then head to YouTube so you can join the conversation down in the comments and we can get to know each other and support each other as a community. So routine for children with autism. Why is it so important? Well, children with autism can often find that one of their struggles is facing levels of anxiety when things become unpredictable. As a mum of 4 children, all with autism, I know this all too well. And while as a person with ADHD that I was diagnosed with, I guess I have to say the year before last, I know that it's 2025, or was it last year? Was it last year? It was last year, wasn't it? It was last year. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, and I found that I really benefit from routine for different reasons than my children, but it's funny that actually for my ADHD, routine is beneficial, and for the children's autism, routine is beneficial. So I initially started implementing routine in a big way long before I knew that any of my children had autism and long before I even knew much about what autism was. And I started implementing routine to try and fit more into the days and make sure everyone was happier. Just for a little bit of context, baby number 1 was in school when baby number 2 was born. So you've automatically got an element of routine imposed upon you by the school day. Unlike with baby number 1, you can just totally be baby-led, go with the flow, sleep when the baby sleeps, all those kind of things you have the option to do. You don't necessarily have the option to do that when you have other children because you have to get up and feed them and take them places on those predetermined times. So I lent into routine a lot more from baby number 2 onwards, and I guess I just found that it made sense that we had breakfast at the same time because that way they got to school at the same time, and therefore I fit the baby routine in around that. And what I realised, certainly as well, who's baby number 2 got older and into the toddler stage beyond the baby stage, the more I realised that actually he really thrived with routine, and when routine went out the window, everything went a little bit wonky in our household. And the more I've come to learn about this, it's really something that children with autism, and I guess adults with autism as well, struggle with. In that if routine is taken away, things can feel insecure, unpredictable, and the meltdowns tend to come a little more thick and fast. The routine, for my children at least, in my experience, it's like, how best to describe it, like something that anchors them. It's their constant. It's if I know what's coming, my world makes sense. And I guess because children with autism can often have so many other challenges that neurotypical children wouldn't face day to day, things like sensory issues with brushing their teeth or struggling with louder noises, being far more bothered by scratchy labels in clothes. And if all these little things make the day feel a lot more overwhelming, the predictability of routine and knowing what's coming next, like a big comfort blanket. Hello, change of outfit because it's editing Rhi here, slightly in the future. Just popping on quickly because since I originally recorded this episode, I've been busy creating something really helpful for you. I'm developing a growing library of printable resources called Rhi's Routine Resources because I like alliteration. These are going to help you and your children design, build, tweak, and actually stick to routines that are going to work in the real world. These are the exact systems that I use inside my own home to reduce chaos. And if you've heard me talk about this before, I was not born to be an organised person. I was not brought up to be an organised person. When I first became a mother, I was so disorganised, partly because of the ADHD, partly I assume because I had children with additional needs and I didn't know it yet, and partly because just if no one teaches you this stuff and you have to figure it out yourself, it takes a really long time and a lot of unnecessary work. So I've created these principles for you to make life more manageable now and not the way I did it in years and years down the line. So you'll find all of Ree's routine resources inside of my Organised Life Club. What's your Organised Life Club, Ree? I hear you ask. Well, I'm going to tell you. You may have heard me refer to it previously as just my Patreon. Now it's still hosted on Patreon, but we've given the club a bit of a rebrand and I'm so excited for it. Inside the Organised Life Club, you're going to find Ree's routine resources, plus a brand new printable product every month. And you can find these inside of my planner store. Well, those products inside of my planner store, you're going to get one of those every month added as a digital download to your Organised Life Club membership for you to download, print off, use on a tablet as many times as you want for personal use. You're also going to get a wonderful community, exclusive lives and extra content from me, plus early release videos. I'm so excited to welcome you into the club. It's a perfect place for busy, overwhelmed mums, especially those who have a neurodiverse family and just want that extra bit of support. There is a forever free area to get you started, so you can just have a little look around. There is also a mini membership if you only want early release videos and podcast episodes, but the full club really is where it is at. And if you go to mummyof4.com/OLC, I can't wait to hang out with you some more inside the Organised Life Club and to continue developing these resources to help maximize your routine. And as they get developed, they will be put inside the club for you to grab. Anyway, check all of that out when you finished watching/listening to this episode. And for now, back to the show. So something that children with autism often struggle with is transitions, which is quite simply going from one thing to doing another thing. And routines really help with this. So for example, if they always have school and then some playtime and then it's time for dinner and then it's time to brush your teeth and then it's time to read a book or have a story and then it's time to go to sleep, and that is always the same, those transitions going from playtime to dinner time to brushing your teeth are going to be easier because they know to expect them. And I suppose if you flip this round and look at it a different way, if a child is doing something really fun and suddenly they're expected to stop, so take the example of the playing and then dinner, if they're not especially feeling hungry, they're really enjoying the playing, and you expect them to stop at a certain time and go and have dinner and they're not expecting that, you can see why a small child may find that upsetting, especially if they have autism. So I'm going to talk about exactly how we set up our routines and really go into depth in this in future episodes. This is going to be the first in a little bit of a mini series and deep dive into routines and how we can implement them, strategies and things. So make sure you are subscribed to the audio podcast or YouTube channel, whichever you're watching, so you don't miss future episodes. But things such as visual timetables can really help. We'll go into this, say, a lot more in future episodes, but visual timetables to let children know this is what's happening, then this, or first then can be another one. So visual timetables would give an indication of a big sequence of events that are coming. You can leave these up in your home. They could be in a certain place in a book. You could have them as cards to move around. There's loads of different ways to do them, and we've used them in various ways through the years. And even as your children get older, it can just be an actual calendar. If they can read, it doesn't need to be a visual timetable as in pictures. It can actually just be timings on a calendar. And I actually have our whole routine in our shared family calendar, as well as the other things that we have to do that are different day to day. And honestly, this, for my ADHD brain, this really works anyway for time blocking. If in the calendar every day you can see what time we're having breakfast, what time have we got to take the children to school, what time have they got to be picked up, you can also see the gaps so you know where you've got space to fit things in. So for me, this really works because time blocking, trying to fit lots in, and productivity. So having the routine in the calendar really makes sense for me. But for the children, they just like to know this is what's happening, then this. And having either that visual timetable or that written out calendar, could be a calendar on the wall, digital calendar, I find it really helps them. And then I touched on briefly the first this, then that. So this is literally a sequence of two things, whereas the visual timetable may cover lots of things that are happening through the day. The first, this, then can be done in a visual way, as in first this picture, then this picture, first brush teeth, then have story. Or it can just be managing transitions through the day generally and the terminology and the words that you're using. So first we're doing this, and then at this time we're going to be moving on to the next thing. So first dinner, then get ready for bed. And adding these very small things in, which may sound like a really tiny thing, just the wording you use in order to describe the transitions that you're expecting your children to make through the day. But honestly, all of these little things really add up, and my experience anyway, for a much more harmonious household, for far more regulated children who are less likely to melt down over general day-to-day things. So routine also supports sensory regulation. So as we touched on briefly, often children with autism can feel quite overstimulated by certain things. Hands up if you've ever had children that are really specific with things like toothpaste and they have to have the exact toothpaste, otherwise it's very much the end of the world. Yes, we've experienced that. I think if you are an autism parent, then brand loyalty to certain things can be very much a big deal, because if your child is not having the exact brand of toothpaste or even hand wash or anything, then we all know that can cause problems. But because the children with autism often have these heightened sensory needs, if they know that these things that they may find challenging, for example, brushing their teeth, getting changed into certain clothing, are going to happen at certain times, the predictability of that allows them to prepare for those sensory challenges. And one of the big ones, for me at least, as a person with ADHD, but it really helps the children with autism too, is the automation of routine. So that's why I love routine. I love routine because it just makes just less to think about for me. If you reinvent the wheel with the way you do things each day, that just seems harder. If, however, you can refine a way of doing things, it takes you a certain amount of time to get to school, so you always leave at that time. It takes a certain amount of time to do your morning routines, you always get up at a certain time to allow that time. And if you've refined this and tweaked it, then your day is going to run so much smoother. So that's why I love routine. It's like paying a bill on direct debit rather than having to manually type in all the numbers and pay it each month. It's automation. But also for the children, this is beneficial because they know what's coming next. There is ultimately less nagging. So when they know what is expected of them, they know they get dressed at this time and then they eat at this time, and it's always in the same order. So, for example, although we used to do it a different way around when the children were smaller and they were a lot messier, they will always brush their teeth in the morning and then get dressed and then go downstairs for breakfast. And like I said, we used to do this other way around when they were throwing stuff all over themselves and they had to eat and before they got dressed, otherwise they would go to school covered in food. But they always know now they have to be dressed by a certain time in the morning. And ultimately, although there is still an element of gentle nudging that has to happen with some children on some mornings, not mentioning any names of my children, but largely they are able to be far more independent because they know what's expected of them. Nothing is a shock. It's the same every day, which ultimately leads to far less conflict, which is what we want in the mornings, isn't it? So routines can fit into so many different ways into your children's lives. You can have routines where you do the same things each morning. You could have routines that fit around meal times. We have quite set mealtime things, again, for automation, because it makes things easier about everyone helping to lay the table, things like that, and also clear away. And we do these same routines each mealtime. And then you can also set up other routines that you do in the school holidays, things that are pre-agreed, because I personally find that although things are more relaxed on the weekends and the school holidays, if we throw routine totally out the window, my children at least don't cope quite as well. They thrive with routine still. So what we do is we tweak and we adapt and we have specific school holiday routines that work. And then the obvious one that I think we all focus on so much when our children are very small is of course bedtime routines. And I know my children specifically have gone through various different stages of struggling to fall asleep, and the better the bedtime routine is, the more time we allow for the bedtime routine, and the more regulated and routine the actual bedtime routine is, the better they fall asleep and actually stay asleep, and then they end up waking up rested in the morning, and the whole cycle just becomes much easier. And then, of course, another thing we're going to be talking about in future episodes is how we cope when routine is disrupted, because routine is all very well, but then we also need strategies to help our children cope when routines are changing. So where do we begin with starting to implement a routine from scratch? Click on the video on screen now if you're watching on YouTube to watch that video, or head to YouTube if you are listening to the audio podcast version. Hang out with me a bit more inside of my Patreon, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye.